Hi everybody, TheHande Mäkinen here. So during this past autumn holiday, I had a chance to take a look at the new CGI animated He-Man and the Masters of the Universe cartoon, and I really liked it. It was definitely a little bit more geared towards children than the Masters of the Universe Revelation that came out a little while ago. Here, this series also ends on a bit of a cliffhanger, so I didn't really feel like I wanted to do any kind of serious series review on it. So instead, what I did want to do is because they've done a new CG rendered He-Man show, and this is something that I kind of wanted to do with the Netflix She-Ra show as well. I just never really got around to it. I kind of wanted to talk about how they redesigned some of the characters and how different they look. One thing that you will notice is that this cartoon has a much more cartoony look to a lot of the characters, and I think that's just the fact that this show is clearly intended for kids. So generally I liked a lot of the designs. A few of them I have a little bit pet peeves on, and I'm going to stick in this video to talking about mostly the heroes. And in case you don't know anything about this show, the big difference between this and the old He-Man show is that in this version, all of the characters transform. Not just He-Man, but also He-Man's friends. So they all have a normal version and then a kind of transformed version. And the same goes for the villains. But the villains really didn't appear that much in their transformed forms. And to be honest, most of them kind of look very similar to their old designs, with maybe the one exception of Evelyn. So I'm not going to talk about the villains so much. I'm going to stick mostly on the heroes. And first of all, if we start with Adam, and Adam kind of just looks like Adam. I mean, he has a hood on his shirt now, which I'm not a big fan of, but there were story reasons why they did it, so, you know, it's fine, whatever. It's Adam. Which funny thing is, like, I was fully convinced that Adam and He-Man were voiced by Roger Craig Smith, and it turns out that he's actually voiced by a completely different voice actor. But it then turned out, of course, that Roger Craig Smith actually is one of the voices on the show. He's Cronus, aka Trapjaw, on the show, which was kind of funny. Now, if we look at He-Man, I actually do think his design is pretty good. But I have the same comment as my brother-in-law about this show regarding both He-Man and Skeletor on this show, is that it does look like they both skipped leg day. And yeah, it feels really weird that He-Man's legs are so tiny compared to his gigantic arms. But honestly, I think the design's pretty good. I'm usually not a big fan of He-Man wearing, you know, sometimes, you know, like an armor or a shirt or something. To me, He-Man should always have, you know, just the baldric and nothing else. Like, it always feels a little weird, but it works well enough. It's not really that distracting. And as for He-Man's sword, yeah, it looks kind of big and bulky and kind of weird, but also I need to stress that the only version of the He-Man sword that I personally really like is the original one, because it is so simplified. I don't really like any of the redesigned He-Man swords anyway, so I don't think the sword is particularly badly designed or anything. And Skeletor looks pretty damn good. Same problem as with He-Man though, he has kind of tiny legs compared to his upper body. But I do like the fact that this version of Skeletor tells jokes again. I gotta say, that was something that I was really happy about. The only part of his design that I'm honestly not a big fan of is the bone hand. And I get it, they needed to use that to kind of showcase, you know, that Keldor was transforming, or, you know, that he was having a bad time and transforming into the skeleton thing, which becomes Skeletor. Generally, though, I do think this version of Skeletor is pretty neat. Now, Teela is one of the characters who looks the most different from her original form, but I also need to stress that when you see what the sorceress looked like in this version, it makes a lot more sense. And also, of course, Teela sort of becomes the sorceress in this because she has a transformation like everybody else. Now, her non-transformed form, I do have to say that, yeah, she kind of looks like one of the characters from Underbite, but I don't really hate this redesign of her. It's radically different, but I think as a character, she is actually really good. And as for her transformation, it's actually pretty dope, you know. It definitely gives me vibes of G-Force, that old anime with all the bird-themed superheroes. Now, Cringer was a bit of an interesting one because he doesn't really look the most different, but his character is actually quite a bit different because He's not so much of a scaredy cat in this version. But the thing that you might have noticed is that the entire team is much younger than in the previous He-Man versions. So I guess because they had a team of like hero kids running around, they needed somebody to be the adults. So that's why Cringer became that. And I do actually like the fact that he and Duncan kind of bond over the fact that Duncan gives him a new set of claws. And, you know, there's really not much to say about his Battle Cat form. It looks like Battle Cat, and it's pretty dope. It looks good. Now, speaking of Duncan, it is a bit weird how he is a kid in this version. He's kind of just like the nerdy tech of the group. You know, kind of awkward, but, you know, I think as a character overall, he complements this whole ensemble pretty well. However, I am not a big fan of his costume redesign, because he just kind of looks like Samus. He doesn't have any of the recognizable Man-at-Arms colors, which really bugs me, which, you know, I get it, yellow and green are maybe not the best color combo out there. You seriously couldn't have tried to make them work? It feels really weird that there's really no recognizable parts. Like, at least you could have given him the classic Man-at-Arms helmet, like, if nothing else. Now, probably the most controversial change in character in this version is the fact that Ram Man is a girl in this version, and her name is Crass, and I have to say, actually, I'm not hating the redesign. It's actually a really fun character, one of my favorite characters on the show overall. However, much like with Duncan, though, I do think her transformation... Yeah, that helmet. What the hell is up with that? Like, I get it, they didn't want to give her the big bucket helmet that Ram Man used to have. Oh yeah, and of course, because she's a girl, they call her Ram Man. I gotta say, that is a really funny superhero name. But seriously, her helmet just looks way too ungainly. I honestly like the pre-transformation one more, because it actually looks like a proper helmet. It looks actually functional. And I especially love the little gem that's embedded into it. Like, it actually looks good compared to the other version. And as for redesigns, there's not really much to say about Orko, because in this version, well, you might have noticed he's a robot. So, and he actually has the memories of the original Orko, the original in this show, not, you know, Orko from the Filmation show, because that would be ridiculous. And, you know, I saw some of the clips of this show before it came on, and I was a little worried that Orko was just a robot. That felt kind of really weird to me, but honestly, even though he's kind of out of it part of the time, I think he's actually really adorable and sympathetic. I think he's also one of my favorite characters on the show. It's just so upbeat. He's always ready to take on the bad guys every time. So yeah, that's the kind of long and short of it. Like I said, I don't really want to talk about the villains yet. I'll maybe do that when and if the second season comes along. So I'm TheHande, until next time, I have the power, so can you.